We were looking at this example where we wanted to go from a long to a wide data set. We established that this is a long data set. As for each country, its observations for different years were stacked on top of each other in separate rows. Like for instance, over here we can see that for Afghanistan, we had one row which had the data of 1990, then we had another row which had the data of 2000, another row which had the data of 2006. So we had multiple rows for each subject country in this case, right? So this was a long data set. So now we said we wanted to go from long to wide. Wide would mean that you want a single row for each country. We would want all observations for Afghanistan to be just arranged in a single row. That's what it means when you want to go from long to wide. So for that, it's a good idea to first have a picture of what the data set you want to look like, right? So over here, we would have wanted just a single row for Afghanistan like this, and it had its women ministerial position data for 1990 in a column, then women ministerial position data for 2000, and so on, as many years you have. In this way, all observations would be in a single row or arranged in a wide manner. Right, so that's the key. Just keep in mind, long may you can have multiple rows for each subject. Wide may you just have a single row for each subject that contains all of its data. So going from long to wide, we just want a single row for each country so that all of its data is arranged in that single row in different columns. So for this, now we know when we're going from long to wide, so the three arguments that we need to keep in mind before writing the code. We need to know what I is. And if we recall from the part 2, that I is the variable which we want to be the unique identifier in the data set after it has been reshaped. So the key thing here is okay, we want it to be unique identifier after it has been reshaped. So after reshaping, we know the unique identifier would be country because we want a single row for each country. That's the whole. Right now, country is not unique in this data set, right? You have multiple rows for Afghanistan. The whole point of going from long to wide is that you want a single row for each country. Then automatically that is what the variable that will be a unique identifier in the data set, right? Because we don't want multiple rows for this, right? So in this case, I is country, and j variable we know is the one whose values we want to attach to the reshape variable. The reshape variable, if we recall, is the one that we can split into multiple variables based upon the values in the j variable, right? So over here, the variable that you want to split into multiple variables, as we can see from here, is woman ministerial position, right? Woman ministerial position is what we want to split into multiple variables. And for that, what happens is the j variable, which will be time, its values are attached to the name of this reshape variable, and then we just create these multiple variables like woman ministerial position 1990, woman ministerial position 2000, and so on, right? So that's why it's a good idea to keep in mind what you want the data set to look like, as it becomes a lot easier to identify I, J, and reshape variable. So like we said, reshape variable is women ministerial position because that's the variable you want to split into multiple variables, right? Based upon the values in the J variable, which is time. And remember, the values of the J variable are attached to the name of the reshape variable, and then we create multiple names like this: woman ministerial position 1990, then 2000, and so on. So now that we have identified IJ reshape variable, we can write the code for reshape from long to wide. For that, something to note here is that we've done something like rename this. Now, why have I done that? So here I first rename my reshape variable by putting an underscore at its end. Why have I done that? I've done that because if I don't put an underscore now, what Stata is going to do is it's going to just attach the J variable right after this. So the variable that it would create would be woman underscore ministerial underscore positions, and then just directly like 1990, 2000. So just to separate, just to improve readability, we can just put an underscore, right? So that it appears like this. Otherwise, if I don't put the underscore, if I don't put it myself, Stata won't put it, right? It will just create a variable like this. So we can just put this underscore to improve readability. Right, so that's why we've renamed. That's the only reason. This is not actual part of code from reshape from long to wide. This is just an attempt to improve readability as mentioned here also. So now the actual code is this. We do reshape because we want to go to wide, so we'll write reshape wide. Then you write your reshape variable, which is reshape woman ministerial positions. You can have multiple reshape variables too. You just write all of the names here with spaces in between. Then after the comma, you separate I and J. You specify I and J, sorry. So I, and then in I we write a variable country, which we want to be the unique identifier after it has been reshaped, the keyword being after it has been reshaped. And then we write a J variable. Our J variable in this case is time, because it's the values in this variable are what we want to attach to the name of the reshape variable so that we can split it into multiple variables, right? So here, keep in mind in I, you can still specify multiple variables. If they all will be the unique identifier in the data set after they have been reshaped, you will just separate them with commas, right? So so you can have multiple reshape variables in I variable, but you can only have one variable in J, right? And here I've added an option string. That is because Stata by default assumes that the variable in J is numeric. So if it's a string variable, then you need to specify, you need to tell Stata that it is a string variable, and in this case time was string. And here, how can I know? By just looking at the data set also, we know that in Stata numeric variables appear with black or blue depending upon whether they have value labels or not, but string variables always appear in red, right? So we can see from here the time is a string variable as it's appearing in red over here. So so because it is a string variable which is appearing in red, so you do have to specify string option. If time was not a string variable, it was a numeric variable, then I did not need the string option. So you will only specify this option if the variable in J string, because Stata by default assumes it's numeric. Right, so now we can just do this. So let us run this code and let's see. So now notice now our data set has been reshaped and it looks exactly like this, right? Where you have a single row for each country. You have one row for Afghanistan, which has its women ministerial position data for years in separate columns in that row. Then you have a row for each country, right? Like this. So this is how we can reshape. Now just to show why renaming was important, like now you can notice over here because I've renamed it. So we have an because this won't be okay, so never mind this. But so basically the whole idea is to keep in mind that so it's important to just keep in mind what you want your data set to look like. If you have that in mind, then it's easy to identify I, J, and the reshape variable.